Okay, I want to welcome everybody to the North American Forum for Small Christian Communities, Wednesday at the webinar. And we have one of our members, our NAF SEC member. His name is Thomas Sauline, and he comes to us from the Diocese of Youngstown. Tom, we are delighted that you're giving us this wonderful webinar on living the Beatitudes. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, Mary, thanks for the invitation to do the Wednesday the webinar. I'm a veteran of about 38 years of Catholic faith formation as a high school teacher, parish director of religious ed, and now as a consultant for 28 years or so. I am a father of 3 sons, been married 36 years, and I am looking forward to this prayerful reflection on living the Beatitudes with you all.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, we'll let you take it from here.
Well, I'm so glad you're all here. I am anxious to share these prayerful reflections with you on living the Beatitudes. I prepared them for a parish program right after the first of the year. And when Mary invited me to do another Wednesday at the webinar, I suggested this that would be real adaptable for this format. And I am happy to start now. I'm going to share some reflections, and then I'm going to have some conversation with you. And then to conclude, I anticipate we'll be writing some Beatitudes that we could use, if you're willing to share, we can use for our closing prayer. Actually, I think the first conversation is a reflection on life's blessings. Please take a moment to consider what you're thankful for today, and also consider any time you've been blessed in the past during a difficult situation in your life. Give you a little time to think about that, and then Mary, can you give instructions to get some feedback from folks who are interested in sharing?
Yes, when you're interested in sharing, just unmute yourself and go ahead and share.
I think one of the blessings that this is Donna. I think one of the blessings that I'm thankful for is a good parish community. We've had a lot of difficulties in our parish lately, and I've been really reflecting as people are coming back from being away, and it's amazing how Sunday is a day of celebration and like reunion. And I was thinking about that this week. We have a new pastor, and I was talking to him about it. And I was thinking, it's a great blessing. And I don't know, it just struck me very forcibly this past weekend, even though everybody's not back yet, but they will be.
Thanks, Donna.
I'm really thankful for my family. I'm one of 6 kids, and all of us are living like within 2 hours of each other. And my parents, especially my dad, has had some health challenges. And one of my sisters has been able to really step up to the plate, but we've all taken turns. Like when he was in the hospital for a week at a time, he was never left without somebody there. And I'm really grateful for the extended community, and especially through social media, that has been praying for us and for my dad during difficult times.
Thanks, Diane.
This is Mary, and I am blessed by my beautiful family and my grandchildren. I have almost 8 grandchildren, and they're all under the age of 3, except 1. And so they have just been raining down from heaven, and I'm very grateful for them, and they've got very good mamas and daddies, and I'm grateful for my one daughter who battles melanoma cancer, and she's in remission right now and doing very well. So I'm very blessed.
Congratulations on those grandchildren, Mary.
Thank you. I love it. I love it.
Well, this is Dave. I feel blessed by variety in my life. It's a wonderful thing. Without variety, we're condemned to permanent boredom. I think that boredom is probably one of the major curses of a lot of people in the world today. We need more variety.
Well, the reason thank you, David. Thank you for sharing those reflections on blessings. The reason I asked you to reflect on that is obviously Beatitudes. Oops.
I think you're going backwards.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm going backwards. Sorry. Sorry. There we go. The Beatitudes are blessings that Jesus offers to the disciples and the crowds gathered for the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew's Gospel and the Sermon on the Plain in Luke's Gospel. In Matthew's Gospel, Matthew has Jesus sharing these Beatitudes from a mountain, and there's a picture from the church on the mountain, claimed to be the mount from where Jesus shared these Beatitudes. Doesn't look too mountainous from this perspective. I doubt that it was. And these are the Beatitudes that we attribute to Matthew's Gospel. There are 8 of them. You're familiar with them. What I noticed is curious that there, in verse 11, there's a repetition of the blessing for people who are persecuted for the sake of the gospel. And then it concludes in verse 12 with rejoice and be glad, which surprised me. I'll have more to say about that a little later. In Luke's gospel, Luke has Jesus coming down with them and standing on a level place. You know, Matthew was making throughout his gospel a comparison between Jesus and Moses. Jesus is the new lawgiver, the giver of the law of love. And so he makes every effort he can to draw some parallels between Moses and Jesus. Moses delivered the 10 Commandments from Mount Sinai. Jesus preaches his new law of love from this mount in Galilee. And these are the Beatitudes in Luke's gospel. There are only 4 of them. And you notice here in this passage, the rejoice and in that day and leap for joy is included. Luke follows this with 3 or 4 woes. So the structure is a little different, and the language is a little different. I'm going to focus, though, on Matthew's gospel for our time together today. Beatitude comes from the Latin word beatus, which means happy or fortunate or blissful. In English, it's blessed. And as followers of Jesus, we're blessed because we share in the life of God. Jesus tells his disciples that I am in the Father and you are in me. As followers of Jesus, we are connected in an intimate way with God and God's life and God's grace. And as followers of Jesus, we enjoy God's happiness. And I noticed in the reflections you shared earlier about your blessings that several of them are about God's grace and blessing, but also God's grace and blessing in a struggling time. With God's grace, following Jesus and loving people, whether they're sick with cancer or trying to deal with the vicissitudes of life, if whether they're joyful or they're a struggle, we witness to God's love. We witness to our discipleship in Jesus. And by worldly standards, the suffering that we experience with God's grace, with Jesus accompanying us, would be considered foolish or bad. Pope Francis, when he went to Sweden to initiate the year of commemoration, common commemoration of the Reformation, told the folks gathered there that Beatitudes are a way of life that teaches us so that we can follow in Jesus' footsteps, a way of life. You know, for a long time, I thought Beatitudes were a list of, well, they are a list of virtues, but for a long time, I thought Beatitudes were things I would check on my list of how to be a good Christian. And for this presentation, and since then, since I've matured, grown wiser, I think, I hope, older, I've come to realize that the Beatitudes are more a way in which we engage with the world, a way in which we follow Jesus, and less than a checklist of virtues or markers. So, you know, am I meek today? Am I mourning today? Beatitudes are a way of life. Pope Francis also calls them a Christian identity card, identifying us as followers of Jesus. We're called to be Jesus for others. That's our identity. People recognize us as Christian because we witness to Jesus' love by being meek, by being poor in spirit, by the way we mourn. We help people identify with Jesus because we hopefully are Jesus for them. It's our identity card. This is a reading of the Beatitudes in Matthew's Gospel.
Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are they who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are they who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be satisfied. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the pure, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people revile you, persecute you, and utter all kinds of evil against you falsely on my account. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward will be great.
Matthew starts out with, Matthew has Jesus identify as blessed, those who are poor in spirit. And throughout this reflection, I want to share people I think who are witnesses to this particular Beatitude. Actually, I'm inspired by Jim Forrest's book on the Beatitudes that I recommend. Teresa of Calcutta, St. Teresa of Calcutta came to mind when I was reflecting on people who are poor in spirit, people who depend totally on God, and they use their possessions to share God's mercy. People who aren't possessive of what they have. As you know, St. Teresa of Calcutta owned few things, a couple rosary beads, a few saris, yet the great work that she did in reaching out to the poor in the streets of Kolkata, the abandoned, the dying, the sick. And there are stories, plenty of stories of how she didn't know where she would find the finances or the means to do her good work, and God came through for her. She relied on God. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. I also think her dependence on God, her reliance on God, unconditional reliance on God, her relying on God more than things of the world is even more inspiring when you consider what we've recently learned about the long dark night of the soul, or long years of the dark night of the soul that she experienced throughout her life. She looked for, sought some affirmation from God that God was intimately with her. She didn't always get that satisfaction, yet she continued. She trusted in God and relied on God to care for her. She was, I think, an inspiration of a powerful illustration of those who are poor in spirit. Jesus blesses those who mourn. Blessed are they who mourn. And I offer for your consideration the woman who washes the feet of Jesus. We don't know what motivated her to wash his feet. Perhaps she was repentant for past sins or regrets. Perhaps that's what she was mourning for. She may have anticipated the opposition Jesus was going to experience from the Jewish and Roman leaders that led to his crucifixion. So she was sensitive to his plight. And there are others who mourn because they're devastated by the death of a loved one. My mother experienced a lot of sickness in her life, and it made her compassionate for folks who were struggling with cancer or some other physical ailment. And my father died at an early age, and she knew what it was like to bury a spouse. So she made sure she went to all the funerals of folks who lost loved ones. So the woman washing the feet of Jesus, my mother, I would offer, are blessed because they mourn. They mourn with Jesus, for they will be comforted. Jesus says the meek are blessed too. Rosa Parks comes to mind for me. Meekness often is portrayed in our culture as weak or milquetoasty or wishy-washy, but the meek are people who follow Christ steadfastly. They are steel to Christ. They are resolved to follow Jesus no matter what. Yet, they possess a tranquility and gentleness of spirit because they know that they can rely on Christ. No belligerence, no bitterness, and they bear reproach without resentment. You may remember the story of Rosa Parks, who refused to give up her seat on a bus during segregated days. She had to, all the blacks had to sit in the back of the bus. She was tired from her workday, dropped the first seat that was empty. When other white folks got on the bus, she was asked to move, and she refused to give up her seat. Refused. I think she's an example of someone who's meek, someone who's blessed because they're meek. They will inherit the land. Jesus blesses those who hunger and thirst for righteousness. Biblical righteousness is a right relationship with God and your neighbor. And notice that it's people who hunger and thirst for righteousness. People are blessed who have this unquenching desire to do the right thing. Not the morally right thing necessarily, but the right thing in God's eyes. They want to make sure that everyone has the blessings and gifts that they deserve as a child of God. So they are driven to care for the needs of others. They live out the reign of God in their lives, providing for food for the hungry, clothing for the naked, freedom to captives. Maximilian Kolbe, St. Maximilian Kolbe comes to mind. I recently learned that he spent a large part of his life caring for people in need. So it wasn't as surprising then that when he was interned in a concentration camp, and there was a theft that the Nazis in the camp wanted to punish. So they randomly chose this married man in Maximilian Kolbe's cell, and they were going to execute him as an example of what happens if persons steal in the concentration camps. Maximilian Kolbe offered himself to take the place of that man. I understand that that man for whom Maximilian Kolbe gave his life, that man was at Maximilian Kolbe's canonization. Maximilian Kolbe hungered that everyone be in right relationship with God and have what they deserve as God's children, including the right to life, which he was willing to sacrifice his for. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be satisfied. Blessed are the merciful. The relatives of those who were shot and killed in the Charleston AME Church by Dylan Roof, I think last year. Several of them forgave Dylan Roof for killing their family, killing their friends, which really, really impressed me. Biblical mercy comes from the Hebrew word hesed, which means graciousness, kindness, unconditional love, an ability to look past people's faults and see their good. This woman and others forgave Dylan Roof for shooting their loved ones. They reached out in Christian love to him. They showed him mercy, despite the terrible act of violence he perpetrated on, I think, 8 or 10 folks in that Bible study that night. For they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the clean of heart. A Presbyterian pastor from Cincinnati, Reverend Maurice McCracken, comes to mind. I knew him personally, not really well, but he was a conscientious objector during World War II. And he refused to pay his taxes because he didn't want to contribute to the war effort. And so he was jailed. And from that day forward, he continued to be an advocate for justice. He continued to be a person of clean heart. He struck me as a person who exemplified integrity and was honest, and he lived by strong moral principles. He thought the war was immoral. War was a moral period, and he took steps at great cost to live by his commitment. He had an undivided heart. He valued what really mattered. He opposed violence of any kind. I once saw him at a homeless shelter. He'd come to speak to our high school where I taught, Mother of Mercy in Cincinnati. So I met him then. And later I saw him at a homeless shelter. It was about Christmas time. And I remember him telling me, what better place to be than a homeless shelter during Christmas time, considering Mary and Joseph had to look for a place to stay when they went to register for the census. For those who are clean of heart will see God. Jesus blesses the peacemakers. St. Francis of Assisi comes to my mind. He said in his admonitions, peacemakers preserve peace of mind and heart for the love of the Lord despite all they suffer in the world. They love their enemies. They heal damaged relationships. I think it's a real challenge for us as Christians to refrain from retaliating to violence with violence. Pope Francis, in his World Day of Peace message, calls us all to renew our efforts to be peacemakers. I know my own personal life, raising children or relating to my spouse, or even my professional life. If someone hurts me, I want to hurt them back. But Christians do something different. Christians try to love those who harm them. Christians try to love those who hurt them. Christians, as I mentioned earlier, try to look beyond the faults of another person and see the good in them. I learned a lot about how to be a peacemaker by raising a family. I remember a powerful experience I had with my sons. I was trying to be the perfect parent, and the more I tried to be the perfect parent, the more frustrated and angry I got when they misbehaved, or when I stumbled in being a good parent. When I made a mistake, I did things I shouldn't have been doing. And I realized one day that it isn't a matter of being the perfect parent. It's the matter of making mistakes, getting angry, hurting people unwillingly, but asking for forgiveness. Asking for forgiveness. That's what peacemakers do. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Blessed are they who are persecuted for the sake of righteousness. Blessed Franz Jägerstätter comes to mind. He was a war resistor in Nazi Germany. He was a devout Catholic. He consulted with his priest about whether he should be drafted into the Nazi army. He refused to be conscripted against the advice of his priest, who said you should stay home. You should be conscripted so you can be with your family. And he refused. He refused and was imprisoned and eventually executed. He witnessed heroically to the gospel. He obeyed God before the current government, and he sacrificed himself for love of God. Blessed are they who are persecuted, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. So I'd like to engage with you in some conversation about those you know who are blessed. Whom in your life you consider blessed because of their Christian witness? What's the virtue, the Christian virtue or characteristic that they exemplify? And can you tell us a story about this blessed person that you know? So take some time to quietly think about that. And as Mary instructed us all earlier, unmute your computer and please share a reflection on one or more of those questions. Who is the blessed person that you know in your life? Person who's a powerful Christian witness to you.
This is Mary, and I will begin. I have to honestly say it's one of my own children. It's my son, Sam. He's 22 years old, and I think he's an excellent witness of the blessed are the meek, that they will inherit the earth. He does follow Christ steadfastly, and he possesses that tranquility and gentleness of spirit that you mentioned. I've never seen a bitter bone in him. He's never belligerent. He accepts constructive criticism, sometimes even with a smile. He just, to me, exemplifies that virtue. And when he sees that I get worked up about something, he's the first one to calm me down. He'll fix a cup of coffee and he'll take my hand and walk me out to the back patio and make me sit there until I'm calm and I drink my coffee and we watch the birds and we chat. And he'll drop anything and everything to do that. And he's a busy college student, but he is a true witness to me.
What a blessing to have him in your life, Mary. Thank you.
Thank you.
I was thinking of, this is Donna, I'm thinking of a couple in my parish who right now seem, you know how some people can't seem to catch a break? They can't seem to catch a break. The husband, Ed, is suffering from kind of like knee replacements gone bad, you know, and he's been dealing with an infection forever. And September 5th, he's going in for another, I guess I have to do a whole new knee replacement. And, you know, he's frustrated, he's angry, but he's also full of hope. You know, I love that part. You know, he's full of hope in terms of that his knee will be better, but also, you know, in the gifts of God that he has, you know, and he knows it will be better as he goes through this. And his wife, you know, she's the same way. I mean, they just need to get over this hurdle, but it's something about, I don't know which category I'd put them in, either meek or peacemakers or some of all. You know, it's kind of amazing. And they have a son. Kathy was hit by a car in Hoboken when she was pregnant. So Paul, you know, has learning issues and developmental issues and so forth. But, you know, they struggle and they do whatever they need to. And Paul's going to be a sophomore in college at the local community college here. And it's amazing how, to me, they're a great example just of steadfastness, you know, and seeing the blessed side of things rather than, you know, the empty glass. They see the glass half full or more. So their spirituality is such a strength, you know, not only to me, but to people around them.
Isn't it amazing? Well, I find it amazing, Donna, that folks who often struggle with life's troubles in a difficult way are often people of great hope, great faith. Blessed are your friends who hope. Thank you.
Exactly. Dave, I was thinking about your wife, you and your wife.
Does that mean that she's blessed because she has to endure me?
Well, that's part of it.
Maybe.
No, I was thinking of all the struggles that you two have gone through, and yet you're able to, you know, keep the faith, if you will, and see the blessed side of everything, you know?
Yeah. Well, the nice thing is that there's a lot of light in our life, especially in the last year since her knee replacement. She's able to get off of heavy duty meds, and that makes things a whole lot better. I was while you were talking about this, I was thinking of a French Dominican nun that I worked with many years ago in Chiapas in southern Mexico, and she probably to this day is the benchmark for blessedness, if you will, in a human being. Totally selfless individual. She had some excellent academic credentials. She had studied at the Paris Conservatory and was quite an excellent keyboard player. But she ended up it was a very voluntary move on her part, looking for the most remote part of Mexico that she could find, and to work with and serve the people of that area. And that she did. For years, she worked with some of the most impoverished physically, materially, if you will, but not impoverished spiritually people of that part of the world, and was always welcoming. But not only that, and this, I guess this is what made her very special from my standpoint. She didn't just sit back and commiserate with the people and their problems. She was an active searcher for solutions, and she made the life of the people in the villages that she served in that part of the world markedly better by improving their diet, by improving their ability to get drinkable water, by educating them in terms of health issues. Just a wonderful, wonderful individual. I'm sure she's long since dead. I have not had any contact actually with that part of the world in a while now, but left a mark, not only on the people there, but on the people that visited her like me.
Wow, it's a great story.
It is a great story, Dave. Thank you for sharing that story of your selfless friend. Donna, since you asked Dave about his spouse, I thought I would share with you a little reflection on my own wife, who Jean, who is a visiting nurse. And I am struck by her patient compassion for her patients. She often comes home telling me stories of folks with developmental disabilities or older folks with dementia that she just thinks are a hoot. She just has a kind and gentle way with patients, from what she tells me, and that I really admire that in her. So she's blessed to have that acceptance of folks who are ill, and I'm blessed ever in my life. So
that's great.
Diane, you want to share a reflection, or you want to pass?
I was thinking of when you were reflecting about your mother. My mom, one of the many ministries that, well, actually two that kind of overlap at the parish that she does. She corrals the prayer list and posts it online, and she also is in charge of Ministry of Presence. And that's those who take the time to attend the funerals of others. And I think it's just such a great ministry for those who are available when funerals are happening, to just be there. And I, both of my parents, but especially I just think of my mom, that she just has this deep desire to help anyone that's in need. She's very sensitive to the pain of others. And I often tell people, when, especially in the Year of Mercy, when I would be talking about mercy in my life, and I said, and also in ministry with families, that I learned about corporal works of mercy at home. I didn't know they were called that in the time that I was religiously educated, elementary age. They were just a poster on the wall. We didn't memorize them or anything, and I said, but I could look at those on the wall and say, oh yeah, I get that, because if I ever smelled something like brownies in the house, I knew somebody was sick, or somebody, had a baby, and if we were lucky, we got brownies too, but usually it was for somebody else. She's never done the Enneagram before, but she'd definitely be a 2. She's just a real helper, but and that's because she's so sensitive to what other people are going through and does something about it.
Thanks, Diane. You were blessed to have such a powerful Christian witness right there in your kitchen or wherever she was.
Exactly.
Yeah. Thank you. Does Sam want to weigh in somehow? Can he do that?
Can you hear me?
Hey, Sam, yeah.
All right. I figured out how to make this microphone work.
Awesome.
Yay.
And it disconnected me, but I was able to get right back on.
Glad to hear you, Sam.
I was going to mention an aunt of mine who, over the last year, I got back in contact with. She's now 80.
Sam.
Yes.
Sam.
This is me, Sister Rana.
Awesome.
Do you know any other Sams in Roxbury, New Jersey?
Is that your nephew?
No.
Oh.
No, I have a nephew, Sam. No, this is my big brother, Sam.
I joined on stalker mode originally, so nobody can see me or hear me. I actually didn't know how to work this app. It's on my phone. So
Sam, you're awesome.
Sam, I'm glad you came out of the shadows. Okay, what about your aunt? What about your aunt?
So she was formerly a nun. I think she was one of the Sisters of Mercy. She's very merciful, and I've learned more about her over this past year since we've reconnected, and some of the things she used to be involved with, including working in Hoboken with drug-addicted women, unwed mothers and such. Some of the stories she told me, she just told me the other day how she used to be a very large woman, and she didn't have a whole lot of possessions a lot of the times as a nun, and then living in Hoboken and such. She told me about this one woman they were working with who also happened to be large, a woman from the street, who one day my aunt just said, "Take my coat because you don't have anything," and like literally gave this woman the coat off of her coat rack without a coat. And stories like that she's been telling me just make me realize what a merciful person she has been through her life. And the other interesting thing about that is things that I remember of her from when I was a kid. She wasn't always the most pleasant person to be around. So it's made me realize that people can have their faults and yet they can still show various characteristics like described in the Beatitudes. And that's something I've come to learn about this particular aunt of mine just recently.
Wow.
So.
Well, thanks, Sam.
Sure.
Thanks for that example of your blessed aunt, who's a merciful aunt. As we come to the conclusion of our reflections on living the Beatitudes, I wanted to share with you some reflections by Father Greg Boyle. You may remember him from the Homeboy Industries. He went to LA to work with gangs, and this reflection I came across Advent time. I think captures a lot of what we've been saying about the people that are blessed in our lives, who give witness to Christ in a variety of ways, as we shared our stories about them. The Beatitudes, he says, are be with attitudes. In fact, I think Diane used the word accompaniment about her mom, accompanying people who were grieving. I think this is part of what Jesus meant when he said, "Blessed are you. Blessed are you who are with those who mourn. Blessed are you who can be compassionate because you know what it's like to be mourning, and you reach out to folks. Blessed are you who are merciful. You've had mercy given to you, and you know what that's like. You've been forgiven, and you reach out to folks to forgive them. You're in the right place. If you're pure of heart, a peacemaker." The Attitudes, he says, tell Christians where to stand with the vulnerable, where to stand with the grieving, where to stand with the poor, stand with the folks who have been who are involved in some kind of conflict, to make peace, Beatitudes tell you where to stand. And Jesus exemplifies God's compassion. He is God's compassion. He stood, not only stood with the lepers, he touched the lepers. He not only was with the outcast, he invited them to dinner. And he was imprisoned and executed for for this compassion, his commitment to this compassion. He forgave the prisoner, the thief, who was hanging on the cross next to him on Calvary. So Luke tells us in his gospel. So it is incumbent on us as baptized Christians who follow the example of Jesus, who profess faith in these Beatitudes, who hold the Beatitudes as an identity card, who try to follow the Beatitudes as a way, live our lives in the spirit of the Beatitudes, to be as compassionate as God is compassionate. Feel the pain of others, bring them into your life. Reach out to those like your aunt who gave the coat to the cold woman she met. Reach out and care for those who need help in a loving way. Be compassionate to them. With your meekness, with your poverty of spirit, with your peacemaking. This is another example of a beatitude that I wanted to share with you. I'm hoping that it'll be inspiration for us to conclude our time together with sharing a beatitude for someone, for ourselves, or for someone we know. This is taken from Prayer Without Borders, published by Catholic Relief Services. Father Alfredo blesses those who are on the move. He prays for those who are forced to wander. Blessed are those who are forced to wander without direction. Blessed are those who suffer pain, nostalgia, and loneliness. Blessed are those who open borders and mix the anthems, flags, races, and creeds. Blessed the wayfarers of all roads in the tears, sweat, and the work of their hands. Blessed are those who open the door to pilgrims, making solidarity the passport to our common homeland. Blessed are those who foment encounters and re-encounters, sowing peace. I chose this picture of Berta Carceres. I hope I'm pronouncing her last name correctly. She's an environmental activist for the indigenous peoples in Honduras. She tried to protect their lands from encroachment by corporate interests. I think they wanted to build a power plant and a dam, and her peoples would have to relinquish their property. She was killed. She was murdered by probably the police force or someone hired by the contractors to silence her, and others who protested about encroachment of these corporations on their lands were killed. Blessed are those who foment encounters and re-encounters, sowing peace. Blessed are the excluded, without opportunities and without voice. I ask you to take a couple of minutes, and if we have time, I'd like you to share a beatitude. Who needs your prayers today? Perhaps it's you. What do you wish for them? And take a moment to write a beatitude. I gave this example. My mother's not caring for my sick father. They're both deceased. But as an example, blessed is my mother, who is patiently caring for my sick father, for she will get the support from her family that she needs. Or Hurricane Harvey is on my mind today. Maybe the beatitude would be about folks who are victims of that terrible natural disaster. So take a minute or two to jot down a beatitude, and I would like to close with the refrain of those beatitudes, a litany of the beatitudes that we wrote. So take a minute, and then take a minute, and then on my cue, please share a beatitude if you've been inspired to write one. Another 30 seconds. I invite you to share your beatitude with us.
I'll begin. Blessed is my friend Janine, who is patiently cooperating with the dying process, for she will soon see the face of God.
Blessed are those we see who wade through the flooding and search through tornado-destroyed houses. They will find and be blessed by God through all of us.
Blessed are the immigrants who seek a safe life for their families. Contentment will be theirs.
Blessed are those who think outwardly rather than just inwardly, for they are the glue of our society today.
Blessed is my sister Anne, who's in need of employment and also needs to find new housing. And while helping my dad in his rehabilitation, broke her foot is unable to drive, for she will see the goodness of others.
Amen.
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 Thank you for those beautiful prayers.
Hmm.
And I commission you now to go and live the Beatitudes as you've testified today during our conversation.
Thanks be to God.
I hope it's only an hour, right?
Yeah.
Oh, good,
All
good.
right.
I think I've got it. All right. God bless you all. Thank you.
Wait, Tom, before you go, what was the name of the book that you pulled some of those beautiful passages out of?
The Jim Forrest book?
No, I think it was a Spanish name. If you go back on your slides.
It's Prayer Without Borders.
Right.
Prayer Without Borders. Celebrating global wisdom, Catholic relief services, 2004. There's a variety of prayers from this one to living in faith, fostering wholeness and dignity. Well, that's Prayer Without Borders.
Okay. Nice. Great.
Thank you. God bless you all.
Thank you. That was great, everybody.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Nancy, you're on. Excellent.
Yes, I was late for the bishop was in my office.